Having a man or woman-made pond that looks natural in your backyard is such a rewarding experience. Whether you want to keep some fish, grow cool aquatic plants, or swim in it. These are some tips that will help you build your dream. G'day, my name is Kev. My aim is to help people build and maintain ponds without spending a fortune. If that sounds like something that interests you, please like, subscribe, and check out my website, ozponds.com. The first thing to decide when building a pond is its location. I hear it all the time. I've got a low spot and no, stop right there. If you want a clean, clear, trouble-free pond, don't put it in a low spot. Low areas are filled with runoff, and runoff picks up all sorts of crap. This is not the water you want in your beautiful pond. I always tell people that the pond should be positioned somewhere that you will enjoy it the most. Some people believe that a pond in full sun will be full of algae, or that a pond under trees will be a nightmare because of leaves. The truth is that both can pose challenges, but both can be overcome. I personally think that the best place for a pond is as close to the house as possible. That way you can enjoy it 365 days of the year, and one extra day on a leap year. Bonus. I'll talk a bit more about managing runoff later on, and I'll also talk more about managing algae and leaf material when I talk about filters. But first let's talk liner. Because we're going for a natural look with rock, pebbles and plants, we need a liner that's strong, durable and stretchy. My personal recommendation is that you go for EPDM rubber liner. It can be tempting to go for cheaper alternatives, and even though some are quite strong, they don't have the stretchiness of the EPDM. Because we're stacking on heavy rocks, having a liner that I know has plenty of play in it just gives me peace of mind. For added protection, geotextile underlayment is also recommended. And if you have quite rocky soil, I'd also put down a sand cushion before the liner. Sometimes I like to add geotextile over the liner to cushion the rocks. That's what I've done on my largest pond. Because it was such a big pond, I didn't want to take any chances. On most of my smaller ponds, I've just gone the geotextile under the liner, but not on top. I guess it just depends on your own tolerance for risk. I don't mind pulling out a few rocks on these small ponds to fix a leak. That wouldn't be a big deal. That's not something I want to do on a big pond. Now the EPDM rubber is expensive, I'm not going to lie. The geotextile and the liner on this big pond cost me over $6,000. On this pond, the geotextile and the liner was $1,000. The liner and the rock are the most expensive part of building a natural looking pond. Now let's talk about how you'll dig the hole. To make stacking rocks easier, you want to create shelves. The larger rocks will go on the vertical walls, smaller pebbles or gravel on the horizontal. You can backfill behind the larger rocks with pebble and gravel to help lock everything in place. The shelves will provide different depths so you can have marginals in certain areas and submerged plants like water lilies in deeper zones. The plants can be planted directly into the pebble and gravel or into pots. The plants and the rock and the gravel are going to help keep the water clean and clear, but I'll talk more about that soon. When you dig out the shelves, it's best if you can make them a similar depth to the size of the rock that you'll be using. On large, deep ponds, that might not be possible unless you have access to a machine that can move large rocks. But on smaller ponds, it's quite easy, even if you're using hand-placed boulders. For example, this pond is only 60 centimetres or 2 foot deep. I dug out 3 shelves, so each drop was about 20 centimetres. I used rocks that were around 30 centimetres or a foot high on the vertical walls. Then I filled in the flat or horizontal part of the shelf with the pebble. The larger vertical rock stops the smaller pebble from spilling down onto the lower shelf. I hope that makes sense. Another thing when you dig out the pond is you'll generate a heap of dirt. Don't be in a hurry to get rid of it all until the pond is complete. A lot of that dirt can be used in the landscape and to create berms that will help divert water runoff away from the pond. Now let's talk pumps, circulation and filtration. It's important to think about how the water is going to be circulated and filtered, and you'll need a pump that is suited for the task. First, let's do a crash course in pond filtration. To keep the water clean, clear and safe for the fish, we need a biological filter. It's called biological filtration because it relies on living bacteria and organisms to filter the water. There's a cycle in the pond called a nitrogen cycle. Basically, the fish or any organic materials that break down in the pond produce ammonia. Bacteria convert ammonia into nitrite, and then more bacteria convert the nitrite into nitrate. The nitrate can sometimes be consumed by plants, other types of bacteria, or removed via water changes, either manually or through rain events. In a natural-looking pond, creating a well-functioning nitrogen cycle is very easy because of all the rock, gravel and plants. All that rock provides surfaces for the nitrogen processing bacteria to live on. The other type of filtration that is important on a natural-looking pond is mechanical filtration. A mechanical filter removes solid materials from the water, think leaves or pollen that lands on the surface of the pond. If these sink or decompose within the pond, they'll produce ammonia and put extra pressure on the nitrogen processing bacteria. If there isn't enough bacteria to process the extra ammonia, nitrite and nitrate, you end up with algae blooms. This makes perfect sense because nitrogen is a common ingredient in all plant foods. So if we can remove the leaves, etc. before they sink in the pond, we can remove that potential spike in nitrogen or nutrients. The best way to add a mechanical filter to the pond is by creating skimming action on the surface of the water. There are a few different ways that you can create skimming action on the surface. I recently did a video on the differences between skimmers, intake bays and negative edges. All three skim the surface of the water, and of course to do this you need a pump or pumps. Your pump or pumps will sit inside the skimmer, intake bay, or a water reservoir on a negative edge. This pulls all the water to that one location. Now I just want to quickly jump back to the biological filtration because the more of this we can get, the better. As I mentioned, with leaves falling in, having the potential to spike nitrogen levels within the pond, this is also true of other things. For example, when the fish are more active, they produce more ammonia. Feeding adds more. If plants decompose inside the pond, that adds more. So there are times when we need more bacteria to cope with these situations. Therefore, when we set up the pond, it makes sense to add a dedicated biological filter whose sole purpose is to provide surface area for those good bacteria to grow on. We can then use the pump to move the water up through this filter. If we set it up correctly, all the water will pass through either the mechanical filter or the biological filter. This ensures that the water stays crystal clear, and it also means less work for you. When it comes to the pump, the more water you can circulate, pretty much, the better. The more water being pulled into the mechanical filter means the more debris it will collect. But more flow means bigger pumps, and bigger pumps means a higher electricity bill. So a good baseline is, if you can circulate the water once per hour, you're laughing. It will also depend a little bit on what type of biological filter you decide to set up, your skimmer configuration, the types of fish you want to keep, and how many. I've got lots of videos showing how I build my own biological filter and mechanical filters, so I encourage you to check those out if you want to save a bunch of money. Alternatively, you could buy a kit that has a skimmer and biological filter, and that takes all the guesswork with the plumbing, pump size, etc. out of the equation. So the main takeaway with filters, pumps and circulation is to move the water with a purpose. Use the pumps to pull everything to one point where it can be removed. Then send it up to a biological filter. Create a stream, waterfall or creek to carry the water from the filter back into the main pond. You can also position jets to help push debris out of coves so it can continue on to the skimmer. I forgot to mention streams and waterfalls will oxygenate the water, which will help all the beneficial bacteria, fish and plants to thrive. Therefore, they're also a great form of filtration for the pond. In a minute, I'll talk a bit more about some tips for creating streams and waterfalls. Okay, now that we've covered the basics of filters for a natural looking pond, let's move on to how we make it look pretty. For the pond itself, one of the most important things is the edge work and concealing the liner. Whenever doing the edge work, it's critical to keep the liner well above the water level. I prefer to have 4 to 6 inches of liner above the water level. On new ponds, I also like to leave some of the liner exposed so I can see if any settling occurs. Over time, that liner will become hidden by plants. Like when we're stacking rocks on the shelves inside the pond, the last shelf we want to go up at least that 4 to 6 inches above the waterline. This allows us to keep the liner nice and high and push the dirt back up against the retaining boulders. Now I say boulders, but it doesn't need to be boulders. In fact, on edges, the more you mix up the rock size, the better. And it doesn't even need to be rock. You can add in branches, driftwood, whatever you want and you think looks good. And of course, the plants. Don't overthink it too much. Over time, those plants are going to soften all the rock work and you'll only see some of the big outcroppings anyway. So what's really important is you keep the liner nice and high in relation to the water level, and when you pack in the dirt behind the liner, create a slope away from the pond. This helps any runoff move around the pond rather than ending up in the pond. Next thing, if you're adding a stream or waterfall, you need to make sure it fits into the landscape. This pond's a perfect example. It's in a reasonably flat courtyard, yet it has a little waterfall, a stream and some rapids. The biological filter is hidden up there behind the Trachelospermum bush. The stream runs along the berm and back into the pond. But what's important is that the berm is much wider than it is high. That helps it look natural. If I went for a full 1 metre waterfall dropping straight into the pond, it would look silly. But this way you need to walk around the pond and explore to find out where the water's coming from. Now if you have a naturally steep site to work with, that's a different story, and you can create those big drops in the stream and the waterfall. I hope I explained that well enough to make sense. The other thing with streams and waterfalls is the amount of flow you have available will determine how wide and dramatic you can make them. A good general rule is 8,000 to 12,000 litres per 30 centimetres of width. If you try and spread out too little flow over a wide area, it just doesn't work. Now let's talk quickly about plants and then fish, and I'll try and wrap this video up. Like I said, the plants are going to soften up all the rock, and I don't know, they kind of help show off the pond. So when you add the plants, you want to try and showcase the pond and also use the plants to hide things that you don't want to see, like filters, liner, pipes, and poor rock placement. Of course, plants are very much a personal preference, and what I like, you might not like, and vice versa. I do have a few patterns that I like to follow. I always plant taller stuff at the back of the main viewing angles, and I like to use ground covers close to areas where I sit so they won't interrupt my view but still soften the edges. I like to use a combination of terrestrial and aquatic plants on the edges. Some are planted inside the liner so they constantly have their feet wet, and some are in the earth outside the liner. I like seeing it all merge together over time. And I love adding in pops of colour whenever possible. Fish are a bit like plants, it depends on what you like. Goldfish are always popular because they're colourful, easy to look after, and they'll eat algae. Koi are also popular, but they're illegal where I live, so I've never been able to keep them. They do grow much bigger than goldfish, so you really need a decent sized pond to keep them. Medakas or rice fish are a good small colourful fish that do well in most climates. I also like to keep native fish. These are Murray River rainbows. We also keep freshwater mussels and shrimp. Well, I think that's about it for me. This video was too long, I'm sorry. If you found it helpful, please give it a like. If you're new, maybe subscribe and check out some of my other videos. And if you want to learn more about building a pond, check out my website, ozponds.com. Thanks for watching. See ya.